Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Once again, this is Rashbi with you for this week's 10-minute Torah. Rashbi, that's right. Rabbi Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rabbi Stephen Epstein. And, I kind of like that little initial thing I do, Rashbi, Rabbi Shmuel ben Yehoshua. I noticed that people that become Jews, they go through the Beit Din and the mikveh, a lot of them, and I'm very proud of them for doing this, they put their new Hebrew names up on Zoom or like to go by that, and I think that's awesome. Personally, I really kind of like my name, Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Samuel, son of Joshua. And it's very special, it's our Jewish, Judean, Hebrew identities. And in a way, we take on a new persona. When you give yourself that name, or when you start identifying with the Hebrew name, and it's really kind of special how a lot of people adapt to it, and the way people behave. So good stuff. Okay, so first of all, for those of you that are outside this area, you know that here in California, we're dealing with some very severe wildfires. And somebody just described them as a trifecta, just kind of a threesome of them. The way you've got kind of all over the place, up in the mountains, you have it down inland, and you have another one out there in the other area. So, it's just really, it's really dangerous. So we have to take precautions. If you are in that area, I hope you've evacuated. Stay safe, do what you have to do. Okay, so here we are in September, and we are a mere few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks away from my favorite time of the year, which is the high holidays. It's the Jewish New Year. And the Jewish New Year, that month of Tishrei, which is actually the 7th month, is jam-packed with all our major main holidays. It's like the 7th day is the Shabbat when we rest, and it's almost as if the 7th month is sort of a month of rest when you think about it. We have a lot of days when we're in services, when we're doing things, and we're just getting close to God. It's very, very spiritual. So, very nice time of the year. It's when, for me as a rabbi, as a Judean, as a Jew, as a Hebrew, I feel very, very close. I feel my spirituality really, really come out. And it's almost like you're in a whole meditative state. I like to compare the davening that we do, the praying when we're sitting there and we're, just going through the prayers. It's almost to me like what some people feel Buddhist chanting is. If some of you have seen the Tina Turner movies, she became a Buddhist, and she's sitting there and she's kind of going back and forth, and she's got her incense going, and she's got a little bell, and she's doing her chanting, and you get this feeling. It's almost like a spiritual rush, if you will. You feel close, you feel like your soul is kind of waking up. Hence the blowing of the shofar, as much as we do every day during the month of Elul, which precedes the month of Tishrei with all the holidays. You're waking up the soul and you're getting that close. So beautiful time. Now, this week, our Torah portion is Ki Tavo, which means when you come, which is kind of funny because the last parsha was Ki Teitzei, is when you left. So when you leave, you left, and now you're coming. Ki Tavo, when you go in. And there's a really intense significance and correspondence between what's going on in this parsha and the coming of the high holidays. So here's what's interesting. Now, the portion starts out with the idea of the first fruits. And, as with everything, we are giving thanks to God. You have your first harvest, if you will, or you have animals that you're herding and they give birth, and you're presenting the first fruits, the first production, if you will, of your efforts, to the priests and the Levites. And this is the way that you thank God, and this is another way that you acknowledge Hashem as being the source of all prosperity. We cannot lose sight of that. We can't let ego get in the way. So I've heard Christians give them a little credit, use the term ego. And what is ego? Edging God out. And I think that's a little profound because that's kind of, that concept is very, very Jewish. It's kind of what this is saying. Remember, your prosperity, your success is based on God's largesse, of God's generosity, because you're following the mitzvah. And that's a key concept that we're going to get to in a minute. So we always have to remember that. We always have to remind ourselves that that's where it comes from, and that we have to be attentive to the mitzvah. Moses warned us about this, basically saying that, there will come a time when everything's great and you're successful and you're prosperous and you're just living a great life. You may forget where it's coming from. And if you do, you will be reminded. Okay. And how will you be reminded? We're going to come to that at the end of the parsha. But one of the things that we do, that we're supposed to do when we come into the land, okay? Remember, we've establishing the outside area. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and some of the clans of Manasseh are settling on the Jordan, what's now Jordan side of the Jordan River, on the east side of the Jordan River, because their pasture is very good and very suitable for the herding of cattle that they do. Now we're going to cross the Jordan. And when we do, as we go in, we are going to write the Torah, all the laws, on 3 stones. We're going to plaster them, and we're not going to touch the stones. We're not going to hew them or anything or change them. Just going to pick 3 large stones, put plaster on it, and inscribe the law. Now, there's a little disagreement as to what laws we're going to inscribe, because we've all read through the Torah, and we know how long it could be. And people say, wow, you're going to put all that on the Torah, on these stones? Are you just going to enumerate the laws like it was a list? Are we going to just write the Torah on it? Or is it only the 12 curses / blessings that we're talking about in this parsha? Lots of different opinions. Again, we're Jews, we have different opinions. But here's what's going to happen. Once those laws are on there, you got these 2 mountains, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. And I always get them confused, so please check me if you want. The 6 tribes are going to be on each of those mountains. And the tribes on Gerizim are going to pronounce these things as curses, and on Ebal, the tribes there, are going to pronounce them as blessings. So the blessings are going to be, let's see if I can remember this, Judah, Shimon, not Levi, because they're going to be in the middle. They're going to be in the valley calling out while the other tribes say, Amen. Okay. You will not steal. Amen. You will not engage in all sorts of forbidden relationships. Amen. And there's about 3 of those. You will not move a person's landmark. Amen. Okay. So it's a series of 12 laws, blessings and curses. And that's an acknowledgement. That's also their way of owning the land, of taking control of the land. See, we're enforcing our law in this land, and now it's our land, and we're going to go do the rest of it, do the actual mechanics of it by conquering and then settling. So here we're taking ownership of the land. Next is the Tochacha, and this is what I was referring to earlier. Now we saw the Tochacha back in Leviticus. Tochacha is the Hebrew word for admonition, warning, something like that. And remember, ancient Hebrew words are more conceptual than they are specific. Okay, so perfect example, the Hebrew word ruach, which we know as spirit, can also mean wind. How is spirit similar to the idea of wind? Well, it's an invisible force. So is the spirit. It's there. We know it's there. We can feel it. We're aware of it, but it's not something you can see, feel, hear, or taste. You can kind of feel the effect of it. So that's kind of the way Hebrew is. The word shave, which means sit, can also mean settle. It's also where we get the word Shabbat, right? Because we're not doing anything. We're settling, we're sitting, we're just not doing much, because we're enjoying the spirituality of Shabbat, which is rest. See? So it's all conceptual. So the Tochacha is an admonition. It's a warning. So we get a series of verses, a few verses, 5, 6, where it says, if you pay attention to the mitzvot and you do the commandments and you obey the covenant, you go along with it, then everything will be fine. We then have about 60 verses of successive punishments if you don't. And the punishments are a lot worse, right, as they go along, but they're also a lot worse than the prosperity. I mean, they're basically drawn out because as humans, that's who we are. That's what we need to hear. We need to hear how bad things can get so we can always be aware. Does that always stop us? No, not necessarily. We think, oh, I'm above that. I can, like when they talked about the king, don't have too many horses, don't have too many wives. Solomon, for all his wisdom, figured he was above it. And in the end, he found out he wasn't. So very important. And this leads us into the whole idea of the high holidays. We're pronouncing a lot of sins that we may or may not have done, but we're doing it because we need to be aware. We need to be aware that we're frail humans and we can make mistakes real easy. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Don't let me scare you. It's a good time. We're all going to be happy. We're going to go through it. We're going to feel cleansed by the end. And that's what I want to leave you with. So Shabbat Shalom, and always thank you for listening.